Hi, welcome back to the Boxers Delights game channel. To signify that Goldix is going to fully attend the combat, he must turn the round order token for his player face down. What this means is next time Goldix has his turn, he'll completely skip his turn and instead he'll just flip his round order token back face up and it'll move on and it'll be Narrowis's turn once more. So in order to fully attend the combat, turn your round order token face down. What you're doing here by fully attending the combat is you're effectively taking your next turn a little bit early. The benefits of fully attending the combat mean that I can now, in defense, use mana die from the source, and I can use any skills that would be normally available on my turn. And after combat, you can also play special and healing cards from my hand. And also, because it's effectively having a normal turn, I can follow the usual end of turn steps, such as using mines, glades, leveling up, drawing new cards, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so that's what fully attending the combat means. I'm going to take a full turn. Once the defender has made a decision on whether to fully or partially attend the combat, we can then move into the attack phases. There's two phases in player versus player combat. The first is ranged and siege attacks, and then we follow with the melee attack. So during the ranged and siege attack phase, we always start with the defender. Okay, and at this point we recognise the defender as the attacker. Remember, we've got the terms defender and aggressor. That's for the actual player versus player combat. Then we've got attacker and blocker, and that's for the individual combats or attacks. Okay, so at this point, the defender gets to go first as the attacker, and he can choose to either attack or pass. So let's have a look at my hand and see what we can do for Goldix. Now remember, because I chose to fully attend the combat, I can use mana dice from the source. So Goldix may choose to play Swiftness and use one white mana dice from the source to give him ranged attack 3. Narrowis now can choose to block that ranged attack 3, or not block that ranged attack 3, or even partially block that ranged attack 3. Here's the thing, when you're doing player versus player combat, you can partially block these ranged or siege attacks. Okay, and that's something that's a little bit unique to player v player, and I'll show you how that might work by looking at some of the different combinations here. The other thing to remember, and this is an important one, and don't forget this, we have a ranged attack 3. Now, the rules tell us that in ranged and siege attacks, when you're playing player versus player, those ranged attacks act just as if they have swiftness. When your enemies attack with swiftness, you need twice as much block to block those attacks. So Goldix is attacked with ranged attack 3. I need 6 block, twice as much as the attack to successfully block that. But I can partially block it, and what it means is for every 2 block that I generate, I can reduce the attack by 1. Okay? So let's have a look at some combinations and hopefully that'll clarify. Now I'm going to use these tokens here to represent Goldix's attack. So it was attack 3. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Now if I wish, I can generate some block, and there's a number of different ways that Narrowis can generate some block. I have improvisation here, and improvisation says discard another card from your hand to get move 3, influence 3, or attack 3, or block 3. So I could use that, or I could use the red effect, the more powerful effect, to give me block 5. So I could potentially do that, block 5. So remember, I had mana draw, which meant I could use an additional mana dice from the source this turn. So if there isn't as it goes, but if there were a red die in the source, I could use improvisation, discard a card to give me block 5, turn a card sideways to give me block 6. And remember, every 2 block I can remove want to reduce their attack by 1. So with 6 I can do 2, 4, 6, reduce the ranged attack to 0, and that would be that. Okay, so that's one option. The other thing perhaps that Nora of us could do is just partially block. So I could, I don't know, maybe I want to use improvisation for block 3 and then discard a card. Now with block 3, that's only going to reduce the attack by 1, so 2 would still come through. Okay? What else could we do? Well, we could keep improvisation, play these 2 cards sideways to give me block 2 and reduce the attack by 1. Okay? So I need, that's the important thing to remember, you need twice as much block as attack, and you can partially block. So for every 2 block that you generate, you reduce the attack by 1. Okay? Let's carry on with this example, and let's assume that Nora chooses not to block any of the attack. Now, to help us illustrate a little bit clearer all the different combinations that can happen in player versus player combat, let's make another assumption. Let's assume that Nora here, we've already been playing for a little while, has recruited some peasants. Here's our peasants, and they have 3 armour. Now in player versus player combat, the attacker gets to choose how to allocate out the attack that's left unblocked. So our attacker here, Goldix, could choose to do 1 wound to the peasants here who have an armour of 3. In order to wound a unit, you must have as much attack points as they have armour. Okay? So if I only had attack 2, I wouldn't be able to wound these peasants at all. Right? So this is how player versus player combat works. So with attack 3, I could choose to wound these peasants. Okay? Like this. The alternative is, even though the peasants are there, Goldix can choose to ignore them. Remember, it's the attacking player's choice where they want to deal this damage, and they could instead choose to do the damage to Norowas. Norowas only has armour of 2. So with my 3 attack, I can use 2 of those to wound Norowas. And that'll leave me with 1 attack left over. Now what can I do with that attack? Nothing. Okay, I can't do anything with this because you have to have as much attack points as there is armour. Now if I had another, if I had another 2 left, I could attack Norowas again, wound Norowas again. If I had 3 left over, I could choose to maybe wound the peasants or wound Norowas again. Okay, so that's how you deal them out. You kind of deal out your attack points. Alright, so using these little shield tokens might help you, or once you've gotten used to it, you should be able to understand. So in this example, we don't actually have the peasants, they're still back in the unit offer. Goldix can choose to wound Norowas. Okay, so he takes a wound into his hand, and this one gets discarded as unused. Okay, so I have the 3 attack, 2 has been used to wound Norowas. Now that we've finished this ranged attack on Norowas by Goldix, Norowas has an opportunity to take revenge and may now himself do a ranged attack on Goldix, which is perfectly possible. Remember, we have this still with mana draw. We could still use, if there was, but there isn't, a white mana from the source, we could do a ranged attack on Goldix now. And the same thing would happen, so this time with Norowas being the attacker and Goldix being the defender. The blocker, sorry. Okay. And then, once we've finished with our ranged attack, the choice goes back to Goldix again, and he can choose to do another ranged attack on me. And then once that ranged attack's resolved, I could do a ranged attack on him, and so on and so on. So you could do this, swapping back and forth as many times as players wish, until both players have chosen to no longer do any more ranged attacks. Okay, so let's assume that's the position we're in. Let's say that Norowas did not choose to use a ranged attack. Goldex in reply also chose not to do a ranged attack. What happens then? Well, then we go on to the melee attack phase.